So we are really proud and happy to host here the poet וסיל מאכנו. I don't know how to present you, from the United States, from the Ukraine, from the world, from this world. Ukraine/USA/world. Yeah. Well, it's hard times for the whole world, for Ukraine. We are very pleased really to have you with us. And of course, I would like to welcome Natalia Fedushac. Come here and say some words of introducing your organization, Mr. מאכנו, please.
Hello. Can you hear me? My name is Natalia Fedushac. I've had an opportunity to meet some of you already. I'm Director of Communications. I'm Director of Communications for Ukrainian Jewish Encounter. We are a charitable nonprofit organization that is privately funded, and we are based in Toronto. However, we have a board and offices. We're a virtual organization in many ways. We have a board member here in Israel, in Canada, in the United States. And UJU was founded in 2008 with a goal of building a dialogue between Ukrainians and Jews. And since then, we've had many initiatives that deal with, culture and literature. And of course, the war in Ukraine brought a halt to a number of those initiatives. However, we are very happy that we are continuing with our literary programs, and we're able to bring Ukrainian culture and literature to a wider audience. וסיל מאכנו is really one of Ukraine's most talented writers and poets. Although he's lived in the United States for a number of years, he's a genius. He's a poetical genius. And I don't know, in terms of the translations of his work, if that is captured. I hope that the Hebrew language publication that is being presented today, you're able to feel some of that genius in his work. UJA also, in 2019, we announced what is called Encounter, the Ukrainian Jewish Literary Prize. And this was for the most impactful work in the Ukrainian language on a subject that deals with Ukrainian Jewish relations, both in fiction and in nonfiction. And we had the prize was already given twice, once in 2020, the other in 2021. It goes from between fiction and nonfiction in alternate years. Last year we took a pause. This year again, we are having judgments. The books were submitted, and the fiction category is also being judged again this year. Vasil's book, Eternal Calendar, Vichny Kalendar, was the inaugural winner of that prize. We do have on our website, ukrainianjewishencounter.org, if you look at the announcement category, you'll see where we've announced Vasil's trip to Israel. There is a segment from Eternal Calendar in English and in Hebrew. You just push on the PDF, and I hope you'll enjoy a snippet of the work. We hope that it'll come out in full Hebrew translation. Thank you very much for hosting us today. We've had the opportunity to bring two other writers to this building with your association and present their works. Thank you to Yoav, who has done such a wonderful job in really reaching out so there would be Hebrew language translations of Ukrainian works. So without further ado, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we gathered here a selected number of poets and writers that we choose in order to meet you and in order to know each other's writing, poetry, creations. Otherwise, it would be a mess, and nobody can really be part of a meeting. I would call now the poet Atzmon Yaniv, the former co-chairman of the Hebrew Writers Association. He will tell you a little bit about our association, about the Hebrew Writers Association. Atzmon Yaniv, please.
Distinguished guests, Vasim, members of the audience. Those who know me know that I usually don't address anyone from the writing, but as this is a formal address which comes to tell you about the Hebrew Writers Association, so I will read from the written material. Things are warming up here due to the weather mainly, but also I feel that we are starting to warm up. So a few words about this association which is hosting this wonderful event. The Hebrew Writers Association in Israel, which is called in Hebrew Agodat, הסופרות, והסופרים, by the way, the name has just been changed because it said only sofrim, which is only the male writers. So now we are called הסופרות והסופרים, the women writers and the men writers. Was founded over 100 years ago in 1921. Its founders and chairpersons have included the best of Hebrew literature, such as Chaim Nachman Bialik, Shaul Chernichovsky, Chaim Hazaz, Yaakov Orland, Abba Kovner, Natan Yonatan, and many others. Today's chairperson is the writer Tzvika Nir. Over the years, the Hebrew Writers Association in Israel has represented the best names of Hebrew literature. Today, the Hebrew Writers Association in Israel has around 500 members, writers, poets, and literary researchers. At the various levels of involvement with organizational activities, the Hebrew Writers Association holds a large number of literary events every year. Over the past year, 2022, the Writers Association held more than 100 events. And this is one of the events which will be noted for the year 2023. The Writers Association, including book launches, reading evenings, discussions on books and literature, symposia, participation in literary festivals, and the like. The Hebrew Writers Association also maintains international relations with the writers and writeress associations in the world. The Hebrew Writers Association also grants literary awards, including the prestigious Brenner Prize, initiates special literary activities, and operates Beit HaSofer in the heart of the cultural center of Tel Aviv, which is the home of Israeli literature. The Hebrew Writers Association also publishes the literary review Moznaim that appears 6 times a year. We also operate Gnazim, Treasure, of the Hebrew writers, which is the largest archive of Hebrew literary manuscripts and documents in the world. Gnazim of the Hebrew writers, which is the treasure of Hebrew writers' manuscripts situated in the building of Tel Aviv Central Library, next to the Tel Aviv Museum, in the heart of the cultural center of Tel Aviv. It contains storehouses of manuscripts and other materials of almost all of the great of the Hebrew literature. The archives is constantly gathering new material and is open to the public. Many students, researchers, journalists, and literary scholars from Israel and around the world visit Knazim of the Hebrew writers daily. So this was a short summary of the activities and what the Hebrew Writers Association does, and we welcome you with open hearts. Thank you.
I don't know, maybe we will start, with your permission, if you will read us one of the poems that I have here in translation into Hebrew as well. And if you read us, we'll hear the language, we'll hear the music of the way that you wrote it. So choose one.
Thank you very much for inviting me to your association, and I'm honored to be here and see everybody. And it's very important issue of event and to relationship between Ukrainian and Jewish writers, especially today when Ukraine has a war and we has battled against our enemy, and our literature changed because we faced two war, and our language of our poetry, prose, and essays now will be another, because you know that, if I correctly understand, that Adorno told about that poetry after Oswiecim, Auschwitz is impossible. We have also trauma for Ukrainian nation on currently time because the world, every people knows about Bucha, about Mariupol, about another Ukrainian cities was bombed and killed people. I think that literature, poetry, it's another stage of front, and we must be continue that, because we through literature united people and deeply understand each other. Okay, I'm gonna to start in Ukrainian, of course, poem Yehuda Amichai. I don't know.
יואב, אתה יודע עמוד של יהודה עמיחי, למי שיש את הספר? אני יודע, כן, ב-22, עמוד 22. 22.
Герберт привів до мене Єгуду Аміхая, якого я засушив, як гербарій, і залишив під іменем кактуса Сабра, хоча Міхай народився в Німеччині, а Сабра – це євреї, народжені на святій землі. Листок Аміхай довго пролежав в якомусь німецькому виданні про сюрреалізм, і нарешті запах мені камінням Єрусалиму. І я те каміння порозкладав у віршах, як чорні мітки на білому полотні, і вони проросли зеленим мохом у книзі пагорбів та годин. Санду Давід і Маргаліт Мататьягу оповідали мені про Аміхая, коли з Санду ми їхали до синагоги у Новому Саді, а з Маргаліт у ресторані готелю Касіно умочали білий хліб у мед, що стікав по руках аж до ліктів. У Нью-Йорку на вечорі його пам'яті, коли читали вірші, то кожному роздали копії тих віршів двома мовами – іврит і англійська. і уся зала виспівувала звуки івриту так, наче кожен перед тим набрав повен рот маслин у буфеті. Того вечора була страшенна злива, що годі було впіймати таксі, парасолі виривало з рук, і вони літали разом з власниками в околицях Нью-Йорк Юніверситі. Ні в кого було запитати, де ж та вулиця, де розташовано Jewish Center. Одна студентка, яку я випадково зустрів на порожній вулиці, вказала мені на будівлю, навколо якої я безпорадно кружляв півгодини. І коли ми розмовляли, з її рук вирвало парасолю, і я біг з тією парасолею, бо почувався винним. А вона стояла під дощем, усміхнена.
I just want to say that to my ears it was like a concert. I don't understand the word, but the tradition, but the sound of them as you wrote them, and behind that, all that, the rich cultural way of presenting poetry from the Slavic region, Russian, Ukrainian. Our poets still have to learn a little bit about how to present out the music of presentation of a poet, of a poem, is an art by itself. So thank you very much. I understand that everybody read the Hebrew translation, so I don't have to repeat it. And you mentioned two of our friends, Sandu David, that is not with us anymore, and Margalit Matityahu, that of course we know well, and it is so nice. Really, this is the connection here, everything. So I think that maybe now I will interview you. I will ask you some questions. Of course, you can answer whatever you like. But I will present. I will. Okay. For them. Okay. Yeah. For history. Just a minute. I have it.
That one?
Yeah, that one. Now you will see the difference of the culture of presenting poetry. We don't have this culture. This rich יהודה עמיחי. הרברט הביא אליי את יהודה עמיחי שיבשתיו כצמח להסבייה והשארתיו תחת השם קקטוס צבר, אף כי עמיחי נולד בגרמניה והצבר הוא יהודי שנולד בארץ הקודש. העלה עמיחי היה מונח זמן רב באיזה ספר גרמני על הסוריאליזם, וסוף סוף הדיף אליי ריח אבני ירושלים, ופיזרתי האבנים ההם בשירים, כמו כתמים שחורים, על בד לבן, והן התכסו בעזובים ירוקים בספר הגבעות והשעות. סנדו דוד ומרגלית מתתיהו סיפרו לי על עמיחי, כאשר יחד עם סנדו נסענו לבית הכנסת בנובי סאד, ועם מרגלית ישבנו במסעדת מלון קזינו, טבלנו לחם לבן בדבש שניגר על אמותינו עד המרפקים. בערב לזכרו בניו יורק, שעה שהוקראו שיריו, לכל אחד חולקו עותקי השירים בשתי שפות, עברית ואנגלית. וכל הקהל זימר את צלילי העברית, כאילו כל אחד לפני כן מילא פיו זיתים במזנון. בערב ההוא ניתח גשם זלעפות, לא היה שום סיכוי לתפוס מונית, המטריות התפרצו להיחלץ מהידיים ועפו יחד עם בעליהן ממבואות ניו יורק יוניברסיטי, ולא היה את מי לשאול איך מגיעים לרחוב שבו ממוקם Jewish Center. סטודנטית אחת שפגשתי באקראי ברחוב ריק מאדם הצביעה לי אל הבניין שסביבו חגתי בחוסר ישע חצי שעה לפחות, ושעה שדיברתי איתה הרוח חילצה מטריה מידה ורצתי אחרי המטריה ההיא כי הרגשתי אשם, והיא עמדה מחייכת בגשם. התרגום הוא של יואב איתמר. צריך. אוקיי, לא, בסדר. תודה רבה למתרגם. תודה. So now I will ask you some questions as I planned before, and then we'll hear our friends poets here. Dear וסיל, מאכנו. Anyone who knows history knows that the name מאכנו is the name of an Ukrainian leader of the Black Army. Not everybody knows all the details. It's really a part of history that in Ukraine, in Russia, is known. In the world, people know, but know very little. So I will just say in brief that he was a leader of, there was the White Army during the war that the Bolshevik were fighting to take control over Russia, and there was the White Army and the Red Army, but there was also the Black Army. The Black Army was a movement of part of the left that controlled really great part of Ukraine. They had a great power, and the leader was Vasil Máchno. Some say that he was sorry. This leads to my question, of course. Some say he was also an anti-Semite. Some say the opposite. Anyhow, it's a name that aroused emotions. When you have told me that he is going to interview you, I really wondered how a poet with the name Máchno could be Jewish, given the existence of this leader. Would you like to tell the story of your last name? That it's not only gossip. You wrote a book, and you wrote about it in your book. Please.
Okay, that's a question which I often hear from my interviewers, and very interesting story. That last name Máchno, it's a Ukrainian name, last name, right? My father was born in 1940 in village Dubno. It's a contemporary territory of Poland. When I visited this village in 2012, I'm going to around the cemetery, Ukrainian cemetery, and I see tombs with two last names, Máchno and Gogol. Okay. The story is that my grand, I don't know, pa, right, came from eastern part to Ukraine on the western part. And in 1945, after Yalta Peace Conference, that Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt make decision to exchange Ukrainian minority and Polish minority from east to west, from west to east. That's why my father came to Soviet Ukraine, and in 1964 I was born. It's that I think we don't have any relation with Nestor Makhno. Yes, because that Nestor is a very interesting figure in political history of Ukraine, because in his army, that one part of the regiment was a Jewish regiment, that his commander, one of the I don't know which that position, Lev Zado, was a Jewish guy. And Mákno accepted anarchism. He fighting against Red Army, against White Army, and he fighting for your territory. And he was a leader of the peasant movement. Peasant movement. Yeah. Yes, and yes, I read many books about anti-Semitism of Nestor Mákno, and other historical scholars reject that. Yes, if you looking on the history of Ukraine on 20th centuries, you see that every 20 years we have war. Every 20 years we have war, and that territory, that people completely destroyed. That ideology, communist or another, that's about Holodomor in 1932 and 1933. It's a trauma for Ukrainian soul, for Ukrainian demography, for Ukrainian, that's people, and we fighting for that because many of governments or parliaments right now accepted it and said, okay, yes, it was a genocide of Ukrainian people. We have a hard story.
Yeah. Well, this name, I think it's a very rare among Jews to wear the name Mákno. Yeah. I think, I don't know. You
No.
The name Mákno? There are many Jews by the name of Mákno.
Okay, it's surprising for me.
No, I don't know.
No, I don't know. But
okay, it's a kind of mystery of history, and mystery of families. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know for both sides, for my family, I know that they're all Ukrainians.
Yeah, Ukrainian. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to poetry, to pure poetry. To what extent is your private life is a source of inspiration for your poetry?
That it's for me that the childhood and memory is very important, because my parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and I grew up with my grandpa and grandmother in the village, and the grandpa and grandma told me about many stories about his life, about his younger time, and about ethnicity. That as a child I heard about Ukrainians, about Jewish families, about Austrian, about Armenian, etc., and from this point of view, when I was adulted and started to write my pieces, I thinking, okay, I must describe this land with like borderland, like relationship between each other. Yes, of course, that's history, and that relationship is not only very lightly, right? We have a dark side about that, but we must talking about that. It's very, and that for me, when I used my memory in my when I write my poem or essay or prose pieces, it's a sources for it's a great sources for me, because I think that every writers used memory, because memory it's a universal for writing. And if you asking me, okay, how about contemporary life? How about another sources? Yes, of course, but if you sitting on the table and open your computer, you used memory. What happened tomorrow, today, etc. And from that, grow up and born your sentences, your first words. And I think that for me, that memory is very important.
Memories of childhood in Ukrainian village.
Yes. Yes, of course.
Well, how do you think, and how would you describe your dialogue with foreign languages, foreign literature, and the Hebrew literature, if you have some?
Yes. I studied in university on the Ukrainian and language and literature, but I also have that I viewing what happened in literature abroad. It's when I was young, I know Polish language and understand.
Polish?
Yes.
Okay.
Pan rozmawia po polsku?
And
Nie za dużo.
yeah, there are some that speaks Polish.
Okay.
I say dziękuję bardzo.
Yes, of course. And that in Polish, from Poland.
No, but I mean, I know that in Ukraine there was a great minority of Polish people. There
yes.
was a tension between the Polish and the Ukrainians
Yes.
before. But you spoke Polish around or in the family or the Jewish families?
No, not that's my story. Another, and I reached some Polish literary journals and magazines, and I read poems of Yehuda Amichai in Polish translation.
Yeah,
My
nice.
first meeting
Wow.
with Yehuda Amichai poetry, and thinking, okay, this is a great guy.
Interesting.
And yes, of course, I like many literatures. I know many writers, especially Pablo Neruda, Sol Bellow, I don't know, etc., etc. But I think that in contemporary Ukrainian literature, that way to West and to going to European or world scene, a stage, right? It's a true exception. Our understanding what happened in another literatures. Because it's very important for Ukrainian writers, but many years we was under Russian domination, you know? And yes. And that Russian domination, okay, Russian literature, it's okay. But for Ukrainians, it's we must turn off our viewing. And it's for me, I like and read many literatures and many writers, poets, etc., especially if I we talking about Israeli or Hebrew literature. Yes, Yehuda Amichai, I know Nathan Zach, Dan Pagiz, Amos Oz, and Isaac Bashevis Singer, but it's not Hebrew, but it's
It's
Yiddish.
It's Yiddish.
Yiddish, right?
By the way, you spoke Yiddish in your family?
No.
So I want to ask you another question that I didn't prepare before, but it came to my mind about languages.
Okay, I know couple words from my childhood. It's a Bachur.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's enough Yiddish.
Is it not Yiddish?
Yes.
It's
No,
Yiddish. Bachor.
Yes. Bachur, yeah. Bachur.
Yeah.
Bachur.
Yes.
It's Hebrew that became Yiddish. Hebrew, Yiddish
From Hebrew to
Yiddish. No,
Yeah.
well, Yiddish is a mixture of Hebrew.
from Yiddish to Ukrainian.
Yeah. Bocher. But the Ukrainian language, I will finish this session of questions now and with this question, because we as well in Israel, we renovated a language that was a little bit ancient language, but we used it, the Hebrew language became a language that we use every day, and before of that, Jews spoke mainly the languages of the world where they. This struggle of renovating or rebirth or renaissance of a language, you have now in the Ukraine. I know that your national poet Shevchenko and wrote in Ukraine language, but really he was only maybe one or very rare that people in the Ukraine wrote in Russian language mainly, and you spoke Russian, you wrote Russian. This is my impression. You tell me if I'm not correct.
Okay.
And now you want to start speaking and writing and creating in Ukrainian language, which to our knowledge from the part is not very, very different from Russian. Shevchenko could write in Russian if he wanted. שבצ'נקו הוא המשורר הלאומי שלהם, מאיפה אני יודע עליו? פתאום צ'רניחובסקי או צ'רניחובסקי מזכיר אותו באיזשהו שיר. אמרתי, מה זה? מה פתאום הוא מזכיר אותו, את המשורר הזה? מה זה? אני צריך לדעת מי זה. והלכתי, בדקתי, ואז ידעתי. אבל שאר העולם לא מכיר, הוא נלחם פשוט לכתוב באוקראינית, כשאף אחד לא כתב באוקראינית, כתבו כולם ברוסית, מה פתאום השפה הזאת? לכן אני שואל אותו, הם יחיו את השפה. I just explained a little bit about it. So this struggle of renovating the language is very interesting to us writers and poets, and to you. Just tell me about it.
You know that on the territory of Ukraine, people used Ukrainian language, not only in literature, but in the speaking
Everyday life.
every day, yes. But problem is the eastern part of Ukraine was under Russian Empire many centuries. And the Russian Empire every time was struggled with Ukrainian language, with Ukrainian intellectuals. And the western part of Ukraine was ruled under Austro-Hungarian Empire. In Austro-Hungarian Empire was a policy to minority was like democracy, right? Okay, you Ukrainians, you wanna speak and learn your native language, doesn't matter. You need school, okay. You wanna founded your science of academy, yes, okay.
In Ukrainian language.
Yeah. You wanna found it that publisher houses, doesn't matter. Okay. That's a problem. It's a divided Ukrainians, and many Ukrainians in Soviet Union on the eastern part used Russian languages because it's a imperial language. It's a language of imperial state. that every imperial thinking about minority cultures, you must be destroyed because cultures united people. And true cultures, people thinking, okay, what happened? And founded politic parties. And politic parties stay to fight.
Yeah.
Yes.
To have your freedom, or your,
Yes, for freedom, for democracy.
to have
for-
your
yes.
your
That,
self-governed,
Yeah,
self-rule,
Ukrainians literature developing during 19th century, during 20th century, in the both side, in the eastern Ukraine and western Ukraine.
I can see that it is, first of all, very interesting part of history, of literature,
Yeah.
and it is so vast, so deep, that it's really just the beginning of me learning about it. I thought that I knew a little bit about it, but now I understand that it's very difficult to understand, really. In the schools, your children, or you yourself, in what language did you start?
Ukrainian.
Today, but before?
Ukrainian.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Very interesting.
In the
Yeah.
5 years from 3 grades to 8, I lived in Kryvyi Rih. The Kryvyi Rih, it's a city where was born Zelensky president.
Okay.
Yes, okay. And my stepfather and my mother was teachers. And in our district, that Russian language school was from my building 2 minutes.
I see.
But my
You prefer to go to a new
not to prefer. My parents
your parents.
prefer and told me, "Guy, you will be learn in Ukrainian school," and I take trolley bus. I took trolley bus to my school, probably approximately 40-50 minutes, and I thinking, okay, that's my colleagues.
Yeah.
Who lives in my building, going to school 2 minutes.
The other
Why
children, the other
I
children.
must 40 or 50 minutes take that trolley? And right
Interesting.
now,
Really. So we see that there are more and more interesting stories.
Yeah.
I mean, in the cultural point of view, not just sure. So I will start now with you hearing a little bit from our literature and our poetry, and I will just invite people, the poets and writers are here. I will start with somebody that we all owe a lot to your book in Hebrew. Everybody is part of our committee of the Hebrew Writers Association. Yoav, Itamar. Yoav, please.
Since we're talking about Ukraine and the war, I will read a short poem that is connected to war. For a dead soldier. Had I known you, had you known me, but I know you in my mind, and that's good enough in truth. All we share is your golden hair, like Lorelei, covering your face. On a train from Norway to Fat Chance. Yet I cannot say I felt despair. You are amazing grace. I touched your hand as if by mistake. It was silky and warm. Would you believe I saw a grandchildren play? You left without a word or a sound. Our house was carved in stone, but the roads always end in a chicken soup of yawning. I drank, therefore I'm bound. Thank you very much.
I will invite another poet. Of course, all poetry here were written originally in Hebrew, and this is a translation. Chaim Sapti, please.
קודם אולי בעברית ואחר כך
כן,
באנגלית. עידן הרוח. זה מתוך ספר השירים הראשון שלי, דוח על יצירת הנפש. סוסי הרוח הנצחיים ישעטו בערינו, יביסו את הריקנות וההבל והתפלות. בשעתה גאיונה ידבירו את החלוף והעליבות והחומרנות. עד חברבר יעלה מפיותיהם כערפל תמיד. לרשום בשעה ההיא בכיפת השמיים מילים של נצח. אספלט הכבישים יודח תחת פרסותיהם. יחלחל במעמקי האדמה. האדמה תגאה, תרום, תתריס נצחיותה. שלטי החוצות יקראו. בתי האופנה יקרסו. בורסות הכספים ימותו. האדמה ברעדה קדמונית, סוחפת, תקיפה. תודיע את ממשלתה. סוסי הרוח הנצחיים, גאיונים ישעטו לנגד עינינו, בשעה של נצח. האדמה תרעד, תקום, תמשול. משב שעתת הסוסים באוויר יעמוד. את פיותיהם ממעל יחלוש. מודיע את עידן הרוח. ועכשיו באנגלית. I will read a poem from my first book, an account of the balance of the soul. This poem was published in English translation at the anthology of the International Congress of Poets that was in Israel at the year 2012. The name of the poem is The Spirit's Era. The Spirit's Era. The eternal Spirit's era, Spirit's horses, אני מתחיל מחדש, from the beginning, excuse me. The Spirit's era. The eternal Spirit's horses will pound in our towns. Will defeat the emptiness and the vanity and the insipidness. By magnificent pounding will overcome the transience and the wretchedness and the materialism. Pale vapor will rise from their mouths as perpetual fog. To write at that hour in the sky words of eternity. The road's asphalt will be melted under their horseshoes, will permit into the depths of the soil. The soil will rise up, defy its eternality. The outside things will be teared. The fashion's houses will collapse. The financial stock exchanges will crash. The soil, by ancient, erosive, firm trembling, will announce its rule. The eternal Spirit's horses will pound magnificent in our mind's eyes. in an hour of eternity. The soil will tremble. It will stand up. It will rule. The gust of the horses' pound in the air will stand. Their mouths vapor from above will dominate, announcing the spirit's era. Thank you.
אני רוצה להזמין את ורדה גנזך.
About the language, I never write in English. I write in Hebrew and Italiano, but not in English. So I write in English this week and I translate to Hebrew. Charging. It was very quiet there at the night. It was very dark there at the night. And a night in the dark, I realized that to myself that I am my own light, and he needs the silence and the darkness to reply my life to be conducted with sparkles and twinkling eyes.
Thank you. תודה רבה.
אתם רוצים את זה בעברית כי זה קצר?
בבקשה.
טעינה. היה שם המון שקט בלילה. היה שם המון חושך בליל, וליל בחושך. הערתי לעצמי שהרי אני האור של עצמי, והוא חייב את הדממה והמחשכים כדי להשיב את חיי להתנהל בנצנוצים ועיניים נוצצות. בדיוק ככה.
תודה רבה. אני רוצה להזמין את מיכל דורון, בבקשה. You know, everybody here is interesting, but Michal have a very interesting point to tell you about it. She's a graphologist. She can analyze your handwriting and tell you all about your character, even things that you don't know about yourself.
Yes, I told him, and I took his handwriting,
Okay,
of course. Thank you very much. My poet is Fatal River. Maybe I would have walked in a different path or jump into water. I swam before, salty and sweet. I could have chosen a fatal river, clung into a different rock on the slope or the slippery range. When I look inside, only then the practical of the universe were reflected in the turmoil of the soul, and the liberate laughter rebreathed in the light of the stars until tomorrow. Thank you very much.
אני רוצה להזמין משוררת, I would like to interview another poetess that we all like, Daphna Feldman, please.
Good evening. I would like to say that I write with rhyming and no. So when I translate, it's very difficult. But I found myself, it was very challenging. But I actually enjoyed it. I actually translated a few years ago and a few months ago, and it went international, and it's been translated into Bengali, and it's going into Chinese now. So I'm okay. I chose this one because I think you would relate to it. It's called Here. I don't have a home. I live here. I have a signed contract I renew every year. Here is nothing more than a roof, a few walls, a boarding house for a cat and 2 elderly dogs, a junkyard that once was a garden with flowers, a youth hostel open for too many hours. There is a door with my name attached to a sign, an address of a house that will never be mine. But then, at the airport, when I picked up my son, After his long years of travel were finally done, he hugged me and said, "I'm so glad to be home." I knew then and there, I may not have a house, but I do have a home. Thank you.
Okay, now I will ask to read her poem, a poetess, that she also speaks Polish. Yeah, Anat Zagorski Springman. Yeah.
ערב טוב. I like very much many of your poems. I choose Starbucks coffee, but it's too long to read in Hebrew, I suppose. I would like, but so I will read. I don't know English so well. I will read my poem Aroma Cafe in Mamila in English. Hans and Berta are taking a break, calmly sipping black coffee. They strolled all day in Jerusalem, thoroughly but leisurely touring the old city. Tomorrow they will travel to the Dead Sea. At the table nearby, I am stirring my café au lait to the rhythm of the rotating spoon. In the misty coffee clouds, I envision my family as they departed on the train from Warsaw Ghetto, as they marched toward the furnaces. On their way, they had no coffee breaks. תודה.
תודה רבה. I would like to invite here also a member of the Hebrew Writers Committee and the great poetess, Debbie Saar. And she is part of also of the Committee of Foreign Affairs of the Hebrew Writers Association with me. Yeah. Please, Debbie, please.
Good evening, everybody. And good evening, Vessel. And welcome to the Hebrew Writers Association and Dekoi. Thank you very much for your book, which I only had a PDF copy, and I really was very excited to read it. So thank you very much. It's something I translated last night, very late. I had some other ideas about reading something else, but because I wanted to link to one of your poems, the one you wrote about the festival. Okay, but it's a good environment now, so we want to be in good mood. So I'll read something else, which also connects a little bit to you, I think. The name of the poem is A Daughter of an Immigrant, בת של מהגר. זה מהספר שלי שירי אור, שככל הנראה זה גם יהיה השם שלו. It's from a new book which I'm going to publish, and the name of the book, I think, is going to be Daughter of an Immigrant. So it's fresh from the oven. Daughter of an Immigrant. She never finds herself in the place where she is. Someone else she places there instead. A creation of blue and white in the local landscape to integrate. Sometimes she recalls a forgotten poet, flips through the digital album. Here, Prague crows above the square, sense of roasted meat, a basket of wild fresh berries, red as blood. Here, New York, at the fate of the twins, yes? Towers kissing the sky, and then a wail of siren. Backpack, glasses, mobile phone, charger, writing utensils, travel kit, passports, not one, ticket, insurance, toiletries, makeup, and memories. She never finds herself in the place that she is. But in any other place, she is always herself, her and the cargo, daughter of an immigrant. Thank you.
תודה רבה. לא צריך. זה בסדר, אנשים מבינים את האנגלית ואני חושב, I would like to say something. Your poem have the title of a daughter of an immigrant. But Debbie, you are not a daughter of an immigrant. You are a daughter of repatriant. Somebody that became back to his old patria, his old homeland. Which defines in Israel, in Hebrew, we have a word. A Jew that come to Israel from another place, from Canada or from the from China, he is not an immigrant. He is a repatriant. We say aliyah. He is ole. You know it. And in English they twisted it and he is making aliyah because they cannot use this very rich, very deep. When I write to newspapers abroad in their languages, in Italian, English, so forth, I use also always I use the word not immigrant, but repatriant, and they publish it as it in Italy it's rimpatriare. Okay, just to say how deep is the language of each people. Each people have very special words for his to express their own identities. That it's impossible to translate. We'll have another three poets and poetess, and I myself will read a little piece, and then we'll hear you reading your poetry in English. Okay, so I'd like to welcome here Dr. Miri Gilad, and I will add, please Miri, that we are sitting here in a gallery, art gallery. This is it's part of our house, of the House of the Writers of Israel, and those photographs are of her son. And you look around afterwards if you like. Beautiful exhibit and how do you say photographs? Yeah. Dr. Miri Gilad, please.
Okay. I will read one of my shortest poem. Usually I'm not writing such short poems, although my husband always says, please write short poem. And I dedicate it to my parents. I was witnessing a very intimate scene while my father was almost dying in the hospital, and my mother was feeding him. I was young, and I was just a little bit not very close to them. And this short poem took me years and years to find words, because it was I never realized or could feel what this scene was for me. So this is a very short poem, and as I said, it took me many years. אני כן אקרא בעברית because it's so short. סוף המסע. אמי מאכילה את אבי הגוסס, והוא נענה. חיזור אחרון. ממלכת עיניה מוליכה אליו יד איטית. כל אהבתם עצורה שם באותה תנועה, וכל העולם נעצר בחלונם לעת ערב לחזות, כמעט מבקש את ידם. Okay. The end of the journey for my parents. My mother feeds my dying father, and he responds. A last courtship. Under her eyes rains slowly, her hand reaches out. All their love's treasure is there, in that moment, in that motion, and the whole world is held at their window at nightfall to envision it, almost asking their hand.
תודה רבה, תודה רבה, דוקטור גלעד נירי. אני חושב שבשביל לשמוע את השיר הבא, שהוא שירו של עצמון יניב,
I know that we have come to talk about poetry, but there is an elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is the fact that whilst we are sitting and talking about all the beautiful poetry in the world, there's a war going on in the Ukraine for over a year now. And although we thought it might be ending, it's not ending. On the contrary. So when the war broke out and the refugees started leaving Ukraine, I wrote a poem, and this poem was composed by a very good composer who is also performing the song. His name is Rani Hallerman, and he made the clip of the song it's called Refugees. This is the name of the poem. So we will see it, the clip, in Hebrew. It wasn't written for this occasion, but it was written just as the war began, my impressions of what was going on in the Ukraine. So please, Shachar.
ברח לך מארצך פליט, אל ארץ לא הרקע. יבר הצופרים ופצצות מצרר. ביתך קדשו התותחים ואין לך מחר. בציקלונך ארזת בחופזה, לחם צר ומים לחץ. בנך על גב, אביך מאחור, גופו מוקף ברסיסים. אינם חסים על איש, אינם חסים על בית היתומים מוטלה פצצה. הטנקים נעצרו לעת עתה, וארוכה השיירה, וארוכה הדרך. ברח לך מארצך פליט, אל ארץ לא הרקע, וארוכה השיירה, וארוכה הדרך. ברח לך מארצך פליט, אל ארץ לא הרקע, וארוכה השיירה, וארוכה הדרך. ורבבות נשים, איש ואישה וילד, מי ברגליו מי ברכבו, עד יזל הדלק. שלג בצידי דרכים, האדמה בוערת. פליטים פליטים נסים ממלחמה, הדעת לא סובלת. ברח לך מארצך פליט, אל ארץ לא הרקע, וארוכה השיירה, וארוכה הדרך. ברח לך מארצך פליט, אל ארץ לא הרקע, וארוכה השיירה, מארצך פליט, אל ארץ לא אראך, וארוכה השיירה, וארוכה הדרך. ברח לך מארצך פליט, אל ארץ לא אראך, וארוכה השיירה, וארוכה הדרך.
You can find it on YouTube. I'll give you if you're interested. So the poem is called Refugees. Flee from your country, refugee, to a land I will not show you. Hall of sirens and cluster bombs, the cannons pulverized your home, and you have no tomorrow. In your bag you hastily packed spare bread and short water. Your son is on your back, your father left behind, his body pierced with shrapnel. They do not spare a soul, they do not spare. On the orphanage, a bomb was dropped. The tanks, meanwhile, were forced to stop. Long is the convoy, and long is the way. 10,000 in escape, men, women, and children, some by foot, others by car, until the fuel expires. Snow on the roadsides, the soil is burning. Refugees in flight from war, the mind does not tolerate.
Thank you so much. So now I read a little piece of mine. I'm not a poet, also I write poetry from time to time, but I'm lucky to have a column in the newspaper that I can write little pieces about life. Sometimes I used to write them in poetry style, but so this is the little piece. I write it only in English. The girl who fell in love with her cell phone. Listen, I'm in love. This time it is real love. You can call me the girl that fell in love with her new cell phone. What a sexy thing it is. How beautiful. Like I can't take my eyes off it. It's just me and it, as if the world does not exist for me anymore. Wow, says her girlfriend. It sounds great. I'm so jealous. What does it do? I don't know yet. It's a little early to ask, but it is awesome, awesome. It is so handful, so handsome. I'm so glad we are together. I wake up every morning with a smile on my face like some idiot. Well, how did it happen? I want details. I went to the store to fix my old phone, and suddenly I saw it. From that moment on, there was nothing else on my mind. In less than an hour, we were out of the store, just the two of us together. Sounds great. It is more than great. You should see how people stare at us when we are together. And when I'm with it, at the office or on campus, in the university, people just stand still and stare when they see us together. I'm in love. I text every hour. I miss it even when we are together. It's me and my phone forever. I can't wait until we'll have kids. I think it's international. No. Everybody, yeah. Afterward, okay. on plan, I left the last part. For everybody is interesting here, as I told you, but I cannot mention that we have among us a Guinness record winner, a professor of architectura. He built among other things, but the most famous thing is the bridge, the glass bridge in China, the longest glass bridge in China, a world famous bridge. And he is mainly, I know him as a poet, because he writes constantly all the time. He have inspiration everywhere, in any parts of the world, because the words like to see him everywhere. So he's traveling all around. My dear friend, our friend, Professor Chaim Dotan, please.
But I have a little surprise for us. Actually, my name is not Dotan. My father was born in Zdolbunev, near Lvov, and the name. Yeah, and the family was Detina, Yeled Zlob. So I was born. They gave me the name of Chaim, but Chaim was 13 years old. It's called Mizhinik, the small one, the little one, when he stayed with Grandma and Grandpa, and they were murdered in, we don't know where the graves are. We don't know anything, but we know that they were murdered there. My father came to Israel at age 17, so he was saved. So the poem that I wrote is in memory of the Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust in World War II. And I just looked on Google, and I looked under Stolbunev, which is near Ravine, and it says that the Jews were murdered and the Soviet army came. Nobody knows who killed who, but my name is Chaim. Ever since I was born, they told me Chaim, so I'm looking for Chaim already for nearly 70 years.
Chaim, his life.
Because his life, or my life, or the future life, or what is life, or what is our mission, all these questions that for 70 years are. Poem in the memory of the Jews who were murdered. Poem in the memory of my family, murdered in the Holocaust in Ukraine. Their burial place is unknown. Poem in the memory of my grandparents. I have to bring them up now to life, so they're here with us, and not just deceased. The late Mair and Mala Detina from Zdolbunev, Lviv, and my 13-year-old uncle Chaim Detina, whom I was named after. Poem in the memory of all the murdered and dead suffering in the Ukraine by the cursed war with Russia. 2022, we don't know. Everyone has a story, and all our life is a story. Every day is a story, and we have books and pages and pages and pages. At the end, we have encyclopedias, but these incredible encyclopedias are never written. So all these life stories of endless civilization are gone. And the story was that I was a few years ago. When was it? There's another story I wrote it. It was in 8:31 in the morning on the 2nd of February 2019, and I went to Uman, and I came to Kiev, and we took the train. And no, it was actually we were driving, and it was all snow. Everything was just horizonless, just snow and just trees. We just standing naked at the very far horizon. And I told him to stop. And I stopped, and I write in English, so I stopped and I wrote, and I did not change a word. This is what it was. And this is what it is. It's called White Fields. But it's actually a poem about life and positive, and it's not about the war and killing. I walked in the white fields. Everything is so pure. Dots of light I saw. In the white fields, hidden dots of light I hugged. To illuminate the depths, המערות, but to depths of my heart. In heart of whiteness, in quietude of silence, the colored dots were shining. In whiteness of snow, water is reciting prayer songs. On the slopes of the valleys, silent waves are flowing, blessing after blessing. In the old snow, heavy soul imprints memories of forgotten time. In fields of white hearts, glowing colored dots, souls of happiness, I cry and laugh, hugging a field of colors, brothers in prayer. I'm hugging hearts of color, embracing flowers of the heart, colors of the rainbow cloud, flowers of faith, a prayer for human goodness, prayer for love. Actually, in this horizon, in the snow, I take another second, in this horizon of snow, everything is pure, it's so silent. And then I just see lights. So what are these lights? They're probably nerot neshama, candle lighting. Millions of candle lightings of the people who were killed, the slaughtered children. But to me, they were all shining in colors and like being alive. So I think we need to be positive and we need to hug each other. In Mongolia or in Tel Aviv, give me another hug. We met in Mongolia, and I just came back from Mongolia where my book was published. And the story behind the book that was published is that I wrote poems at night because there was a storm. And I did not go to sleep, so I wrote poems, and poems while walking in the desert, in the Gobi. And then they told me afterwards, and more and more and more, and after 6 years of birth, the child was born, and there was a week of poetry, and the book was born. But it took me 6 years or 12 years, and that's why I came from Mongolia, and you are here. So actually, we're all together. There's no chance the Russians are going to take over. I'm not saying winning or losing. There's no chance. It's always the children of life. Thank you.
תודה רבה. Thank you so much, Chaim.
Hello, my name is Asaf Bartov. I am the editor of Nemala, a series of translations of Ukrainian prose from the Ukrainian language into Hebrew. You've seen that there are poetry books in translation, but there was no prose. Not a single novel was translated into Ukrainian until very recently, and we have been publishing Ukrainian authors in translation, Andruchovich, Vinnichuk, and we're about to publish the third book by Oksana Zabushko. I'm here, I'm not a poet, but I'm here because I want to just connect, because you mentioned this society, this association was founded by Hebrew authors, most of whom were born in Ukraine. When I travel in Ukraine, and I used to live there until the war, the map of Ukraine is also the map of Hebrew literature. And everywhere I go, I see memories of the great Hebrew authors who lived and worked there. And I wanted to share, Hebrew poetry is notoriously difficult to translate into English. So I wanted to share something that is available in English. I translated a short poem by David Fogel. Fogel was born in 1891 in Sataniv and died in 1944 in Auschwitz. This one he wrote when he was 30 years old, and it's called 30 Years. 30 years my road already stretches. It will soon end, and I no wiser am. Even now I'm still that stubborn boy who, running down the mountain, pulls an aging goat toward him by its beard. All I have lived as boy and fool, I could live once again, still none the wiser. For we are fools and children in eternity.
תודה רבה. Okay, now I want to finish with your reading in English, but before of that, somebody wanted to ask us question. You wanted to ask him a question? You still want? Yeah.
סליחה.
זה בסדר, מפה.
משיכה מסוימת. I wanted to ask about your poetry. I've been going through your, this is the first time I'm reading your material, and I noticed that you have a lot of, what is it, homage, or is it you keep on giving more names of authors or poets, and you write about it. So tell me, why are you, it seems like you're really like, I'm trying to understand what is the reason that you have this need, maybe, to remind all these names and pick up all these names. So what is the reason you do that?
It's my dialogue with another poets and another writers, and some kind of build of paper bridge or bridge of communication, and all together we create one text, right? And but in other languages. And for me, very interesting to have dialogues and conversation with another poet, because I think it seems for me that it's normal for writer, for poet. You must be every poet needs readers, or another poet about talking about that verses, about life, about etc. Because during dialogues we create another sphere of language.
Yeah. As you said, this is a dialogue, and we are sharing a dialogue now, not on paper but face to face. So please read your poetry in English.
Yeah. That poem title is Advice on How Best to Write Poetry. One of your eyes reads Cyrillic letters, the other Latin alphabet. Some write verses from left to right. Yehuda Amichai wrote from right to left. The golden Chinese poets wrote many works in columns. These few black kernels of cinnamon, just the right spice for the cookery of world poetry. But regardless of the time in which they lived, or their method of writing, or the alphabet they used, they all loved wine and women, mountains, ranges, fried fish, salad of red peppers, wasting money and welching on their debts. They all hunted for sounds, like a grown kids with the nets for catching fish or butterflies, or like terminal alcoholics, hopeless drugs addicts, sexual perverts, heirs to Narcissus, Odyssey, Orpheus. Some wrote with a pen, others cut their veins and dipped into the blood, thinking by alcohol and drugs a fat needle, the proboscis of the sonolent bee, but regardless of the liquid drying, on the paper of cuff or sleeves, the poetry recorded by any method became color and sound, excrement, vomit, and senis. Now and then, a dying bee may fall onto your window sill, from the other space, and while lying on its back, it's flying away at the viscous autumn air, you will renounce all advice on how to write poetry. For when you watch how yachts prepare to leave this bay, and how sailors say goodbye to their temporary lovers, and how tar disappear head down like a corpse in water, and how thousands of saxophones like a question marks digest in their stomach in the green dropping of music, and how the electric current passing through the thinnest string of a violin reduce to ashes the slightest resistance of the false note. You know that it is dangerous to tread of this footbridge laid out by a full moon on the brocaded body of water, and therefore any kind of advice will prove to be useless, since to me someone has tried this before. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Natalia Fedusek from the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter. Thank you, Nira Tuval. She is the CEO of the Hebrew Writers Association, a poet and a writer herself, very talented. Thank you, Yoav Itamar. Thank you for everything. Thank you, Chaim Sapti. Thank you, Varda Ginzach. Thank you, Michal Doron. Thank you, Daphne Feldman. Thank you, Anat Zagorski-Springman. Thank you, Debbie Sar. Thank you, Dr. Miri Gilad. Thank you, Atzmon Yaniv. Thank you, Professor Chaim Dotan. And thank you, Vasil Máכנו. Thank you.